to episode 12 of From the Stands, the Cool Pick Show. On today's show, we're very excited to welcome Sportscaster Brendan Dunlop to the show. Before we do that, though, and until we get Brendan on the show, we would just like to give a shout out to our design team, Mad Creative and Matthew DeCastro, for all their work that they do for the show and all the design work that you see. So if you do need any design work done for yourself or for someone you know, please let us know and we will connect you. And just like that, Brendan is here to go, so we will get him on the show and get things rolling. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm good, Matt. How you doing?
Good. Loving the beard.
Thanks, buddy. It's wild. This is something that we don't get to enjoy on television in normal times. So, taking full advantage, although I don't know what I'm doing. And the beard oil game and trimmers are brand new to me. But I've just avoided the trimmers altogether. So I saw you shout out design work. If there's any sponsors or shout outs for beard oil, please direct them to me, buddy.
I'll make sure. I have a few friends that are in the hairdressing business. So I'll ask them and see if they know of any good ones to get you connected with. It's funny because, as you see, I have a pretty full beard too, but nothing to yours, because I cannot stand it any longer than this, because otherwise I just once I start being able to put my fingers through the beard, I'm like, nah, it's time to cut it.
Right. It definitely goes through stages. I find that it was more annoying at the beginning. Now I just curiously want to pull on it all the time. By the way, my apologies for the dog slurping up the bowl of water behind me. Usually it's a 2-second job, but obviously now he wants to finish the entire bowl because he knows I'm in the middle of doing something and he's annoyed.
Buddy, it's warm outside. We're getting to that level. It's what's happening working from home and doing these from home now. It is what it is, right? So it's all good.
Yeah, totally. There's always going to be some German Shepherd or some child that comes crashing into somebody's Zoom or someone's IG Live at some point. And if not, then are they even really living? I mean, come on.
Exactly. How have things been overall with you? Obviously it's a trying time right now, not being on television, but how have you been kind of keeping sane with everything that's happening?
Yeah, it's been strange. It's also been cyclical too. I find that at the beginning, I think a lot of people were feeling the magnitude of the global crisis and feeling the total uncertainty. And then the next month was, okay, how do I live within this construct? How do I still be creative? How do I still kind of do some work? And now it seems like people just really want to get back to normal because the weather is clear, right? And with these leagues coming back now, just watched the MLS tournament draw a few moments ago, which was pretty exciting. Montreal and Toronto got paired together in this brand new tournament that MLS is going to do kind of as a Kickstarter to the regular season, which is totally uncertain because of coronavirus and the way of the world. So I think just kind of trying to go with the flow, and I feel like I've been consuming constantly, which is what I guess I usually do normally. But between documentaries and trying to read every article that's posted on The Athletic with stellar journalism, I feel like I've spent it consuming and try to have a little bit of a balance. I'm not really a gym guy, so I wasn't missing that, but I did buy a bike because I haven't been playing co-ed soccer or men's league hockey for the last 3 months, so that has kept me a little bit active. But yeah, as most people, I think there are periods where I find it easy to keep sane and periods where I definitely miss the daily sports consumption.
Well, if you ever want to go for a bike ride, I'm out in Whitby. There's a great trail that goes from Rouge Hill all the way through to Oshawa. It's a lovely little thing down by the lake, so I'll take you for a tour through that.
Awesome, buddy. I've never really explored Durham. I got to be honest. I've never made much of Durham out there, so I some exploring needs to be done.
There you go. Well, let's just hop into talking about you and your broadcast work. So my first question for you is, what was your passion towards wanting to get into broadcast journalism?
Yeah, I think I always had a passion for sports. I got into hockey and baseball in the early 90s. My dad was a massive Leafs fan, is a massive Leafs fan and Blue Jays fan. I grew up in Windsor, so right next to Detroit. So I actually liked the Tigers, but my access point was the Blue Jays. That they were in the World Series. They were always on television. That wasn't the case in Windsor with the Detroit team, but I did get to listen to the Tigers on the radio all the time. Famed broadcaster who was just over my shoulder there, the most expensive bobblehead ever made, Ernie Harwell. I used to fall asleep listening to Ernie Harwell on the radio in summers, and that was really my interest into something bigger than just playing. Like most kids I recognized quite early, probably at the age of 8, that I would never be skilled enough to play professional sports. But I always had this obsession with it, and as I grew up, probably around grade 8, there was this assignment in grade school in grade 8. I realized, we were asked, write what you're going to be when you grow up, and don't put something grandiose and unrealistic. Like, what could you actually do? And I thought, you know what, I'm going to work in sports in some capacity, be it a sports writer like Ray Romano. That was he was on Everybody Loves Raymond, and that was kind of the thought to, wow, this could be a real career. So I wrote 8 pages on that 8th grade assignment, and I got the teacher came over to hand it back to me upside down. She said this was the best one by far. I flip it over, B minus. B minus. How is it a B minus if it's the best one? Well, I asked you to write 1 page, and you wrote me 8. But I knew pretty much from that moment that pursuing sports journalism in some capacity and sports media in some realm was definitely the only thing I wanted to do. So I was fortunate in that sense to have a focus and have that goal early on, and then very fortunate as my career's gone on. Yeah.
See, you gotta save those 8 pagers for when you get into high school and college, when they actually take the more time to read through stuff. Like, no discredit to elementary school teachers, but I mean, I was in the same boat. I think I wrote like a 4-page paper, and they're like, "This was good, just like next time, one page." Like, but speaking of Ray Romano and Everybody Loves Raymond, you got your passion to be on TV from that show. What was that connection like? How did that connection start for you? What was it like?
Yeah, well, I think it was particularly to that assignment. It was that assignment, Mrs. Mickage. It was like the first week of 8th grade, which in Ontario, or at least where I grew up, it's your last year before going to high school. She was an older teacher, and she just said, I want you to write a 1-page essay on what you want to be when you grow up. And she kind of polled the whole class before we did this assignment. I said, I'm going to be an actor. She said, oh, that's great. Are you going to do plays at the big Windsor Theater? Like, no, I'm not going to do plays. I'm going to do movies in Hollywood. I'm going to move to LA, and I'm going to make millions. She said, yeah, that's great. I don't really know you, but I feel like I know you well enough to know you have other passions. Don't write your assignment on being an actor. I want you to write something else. So I was like, who does Mrs. Mickage think she is? What? I could be an actor like George Clooney. I mean, I got the grays now, but I'm going to be who is she to tell me I can't be an actor? So that was basically it. And I sat down after dinner watching Everybody Loves Raymond, which was kind of just a pastime for my mother, my brother, and I. And he was a traveling reporter for the Knicks. And I was like, oh, that would be great. I'm obsessed with sports. I'm not allowed to be an actor. So why don't I just cover sports in some capacity? So that was the tie into Everybody Loves Raymond. I think he planted the seed. I also have been a big New York Knicks fan since the Patrick Ewing days and the run to the finals, the challenges with the Bulls in the mid '90s. So that probably synced the two together. But I do think that it still may have happened, my pursuit of sports journalism, if not for Everybody Loves Raymond. But that's definitely the sticking point because of that Mrs. Mickage assignment in grade 8. 100%.
So it's all because of her. That's it. She was the Kickstarter for you.
She was definitely the lighter fluid. Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of the Bulls, have you had a chance? I'm sure by now you've had a chance, but did you watch the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance?
I did, of course, man. I absolutely loved it. The only thing that I wish I could have taken part in with the consumption of The Last Dance was to share it live and to be, watching it and be able to tweet live about it, which that wasn't the case. I know some people in Canada found ways to watch it at 9 o'clock when it was on at ESPN, but for those of us that had to wait till 3 a.m. to watch it on Netflix, I did miss that element of it. However, the documentary was absolutely incredible. I mean, my introduction to sports, my first sports icon, first athlete that I loved was Michael Jordan. So I had much anticipated that and was very happy to hear that ESPN had moved that up from the summer to play it in April when they ran it. And it was great. I mean, I expected it to be a controlled narrative. I expected there to be criticisms. I expected Jordan to, get the message across that he wanted to. And let's be honest, he's entitled to that. He's, he granted the access at the time in the 90s. He's granted the access now. He doesn't have to share any of that. So if, he put his hands on it to control the narrative in a certain way, I got to give him credit. He touched on topics I didn't think that he would. I didn't think that he'd go into his dad in the depth that he did. I didn't think that he'd talk about the allegations of his gambling issues and the tie-in and that. So to be honest, to me, it was far more well-rounded, I think, than a lot of people criticized, and that I personally anticipated. But I wasn't there for a journalistic historical anthology. I was there to be entertained, And so all that was bonus. So for me, just to sit down and go down nostalgia lane and absorb all that again, and then watch how many people younger than me or older than me that maybe weren't into basketball at that time enjoy that and watch them digest that and really come away with a sense of Michael Jordan was just incredible. And I wish I could go back to those that time in the mid '90s. That was pretty cool overall, for sure.
One of the most interesting or like top 5 points of that whole documentary for me was the part when he's talking about he's in the hotel room and there's nothing open for food and they order from the pizza joint that's like across the street and there's 5 guys that come in to deliver his pizza. It's like, how stupid could you be that if you're going to try and do something to MJ, that there's 5 of you coming to do this? Like, what were you really expecting?
Yeah, seriously. And there was a couple of things, a couple of real good takeaways and moments, stories that you may have heard before, but you forgot about. Like the Dennis Rodman story in Vegas, the Vegas vacation in the middle of the season, his brief marriage to Carmen Electra. Just watching everyone dissect Dennis Rodman then and then do it again now, I got a real kick out of that. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely, like you said, it was a top documentary and it was really well done. Going back to you though, or transitioning to that. So you started your career on the Score with the Footy Show. What was it like for you to start your career in professional sports on the network?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, I was very fortunate to do it at a national network and very fortunate to do it there at the Score. It truly was the most incredible and unique experience. That compared to what I've seen since the Score and the stories I hear from other people, certainly stories from friends in the States, the Score, really stood out. It really was cut from a different cloth in every facet. So I started there after my second year in university in the archives department, and it was such a intimate environment that while I was literally the bottom of the food chain, if you will, I got to interact with everybody that was there, from Greg Sansoni, who not long after I got in there had gone from being one of the lead anchors to being one of the lead executives, to Tim and Sid, Cabby, Adnan. You were so close in proximity that it was impossible not to have interactions and exchanges with these guys, who I was always picking their brain and probably annoying them, to be honest, asking them questions, looking to just gain knowledge and information and exposure and experience to eventually move up, to which I did. It was a radio station that they had on Sirius Satellite Radio called Hardcore Sports Radio. So I started doing weekend updates at 20. That was my first on-air job, first on-air experience. And then started hosting a soccer radio show with James Sharman and Christian Jack, who were the two faces of the Footy Show at the time. And then that's how I got on the Footy Show on TV shortly after. I was the interactive host, the Twitter guy, essentially. I would read tweets and audience engagement into the show. So, yeah, that evolution then took me to the desk at Sportsnet and Fox Soccer News. But the Score really was such a cool time where you were really encouraged to just try things and be creative. And that creativity was hugely rewarded. That's how these shows happen. That's how the evolution of going from the weekend update booth to hosting a soccer show with these two guys. And then I built a relationship with them. They invited me onto the TV show. Then I started doing the desk elsewhere and did it with James at Fox and Sportsnet for a brief time there while that was going on. So to watch the evolution of that, a ton of credit goes to the Score for that. I wouldn't have had, I wouldn't have had anywhere near the experiences I've had if it wasn't for those early days of the Score, which I'm very grateful for, man.
Now, obviously, we know how much of a transition the Score has gone through over the years. What was that transition like for you personally?
Yeah, well, I left the Score just before the purchase from Rogers, just before Sportsnet bought the Score, actually. So I wasn't really present for kind of any of that. Watching, some of the big names and some of the big talents leave the Score definitely changed the landscape while I was still there. First Cabby, then Tim and Sid. Adnan actually may have been the first one before Cabby. So yeah, watching the station change there before Rogers came in and made the purchase, already being at Sportsnet. Seeing how they integrated some phenomenal people from the Score into the Sportsnet environment, really elevated Sportsnet's level. And I was super happy to, go from leaving a place, which was a few months ago. Okay, guys, it was great working with you, but I won't work with you again. And 6 months later, we're in the same building, now doing an even bigger, grander scale project. So that was really interesting. That was cool. And I think that you still have a lot of that score DNA in a lot of what is on Sportsman 360, obviously with the wrestling, and with the highlights and the wheel and that, and a lot of those guys that have had great opportunities because they were able to kind of do both of the score or try and recreate what happened at the score in the highlight packs. That's definitely evident when I watch the highlights and see the highlight zone at work there.
Yeah, it's funny how how much of a small world sports is, or the sport industry is, because like you said, it's like, all right, guys, great working with you. See you never. And like 6 months later, oh, hey guys, how are you? Right? And
Yeah.
it's you never know where you're going to go or who you're going to see down the road.
It really is such a small world. I mean, yeah, I've got a lot of friends at TSN that I worked with at the score, or that I know from events and that, or I started playing co-ed league soccer with Matthew Shinetti because we met at some Raptors practice one time, and he had a Manchester United tattoo, which I spotted immediately. Like, oh, really? I wouldn't have guessed that. Yeah, diehard fan. Oh, great. Do you play? Come out of my team. So yeah, it really is a small circle, and you never know who you're going to run into again down the line.
Now, talking about all the people that you mentioned, Cabby, Tim and Sid, plus the countless others that you worked with growing through the score into Sportsnet to where you are today, who's been one of your biggest mentors for you kind of growing in the industry?
Yeah, I've been really fortunate that a lot of those guys shared some valuable advice that they didn't have to. Some were, a little more silent than others, but spoke up when they felt that I needed to hear it. And just the fact that they were willing to. Tim McAuliffe is someone who I never really worked with directly at all. There was never an environment where we were a part of the same show or on the same thing. But he saw me hustling. He knew that I was working. So if there was something that I needed to be told, he was happy to come and give me some direction. And I was very thankful and very grateful for that. I worked very closely with James Sharman, so he is my absolute mentor. If it wasn't for James Sharman, I may have left the industry to go teach English in Korea. In 2009, I had a buddy doing that, and I thought, you know what, I'm struggling here. I'm working 3.5 part-time jobs, all of the score. I'm struggling for money. I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to join them on TV. Maybe I should go and do something else. And he said, look, keep with it, stay focused. It's not about the money. The money will come. It might not come anytime soon, but the money will come eventually if you just keep working hard at it. So stay focused and keep working. And he gave me the opportunity to be on television with them to the footy show. So to make the jump from radio to TV is a rare thing and difficult at times. So if it wasn't for James, that may not have happened anytime soon. So I was very, very thankful to always have James Sharman in my corner, and then to have some time with him at Sportsnet. And we did Soccer Central and Fox Soccer News for about 6 months to a year. That was pretty special. Those definitely some of the highlight days of my career for sure.
Well, as much as it's good that you decide to stick it out and you're living out your dream and your kind of thoughts of being a broadcaster or a sportscaster, I have to say, Korea teaching out in Korea isn't too bad. A friend of mine was out doing that. He just obviously came back because of COVID, but he was having a blast out there doing that. So yeah, it's always interesting where you're unsure where a path may take you, and then obviously, like you said, it eventually leads to good and happiness to a degree, right?
Yeah, totally. I do think about that a lot sometimes. My buddy had gone there and thought it was, a couple of years after university. To be honest, it may not even have been 2 years after I graduated, but I'd already been at the score for 3 years. So I felt like, well, as much of a break as it might be, or as young as I may have felt, that was my buddy's argument. It's like, well, you can just come back and get on the sports ladder. I didn't think that that would be possible. So I'm glad that I didn't make that jump, and I just went to visit him in Korea for 2 weeks instead. That was a pretty good trade-off. I did the vacation instead of the full career move.
Nice. When talking about soccer and like being part of the footy show, doing so much on TV in relation to soccer, what's your passion towards soccer versus another sport like hockey, football? Growing up in Windsor, again, you're kind of just near Detroit. The Detroit Red Wings, and then you're down the road from the Maple Leafs, things like that. What was your passion towards soccer?
Yeah, good question. I started playing soccer maybe at 6 or 7, I think. And the USA 94, the World Cup in the United States, was the biggest deal, obviously. My dad had always got me steered me towards sports. That was very, very much our shared interest from the beginning. So I understood the magnitude and the importance of the World Cup. I could see to him what a big deal it was that the World Cup was going to be, a handful of games, literally a 45-minute drive away from where we lived. How unique and interesting that was. but also at the same time how exotic soccer was in comparison to some of the other sports. The fact that, you know, matches weren't on and available all the time. The Premier League wasn't on weekly and certainly wasn't on live. You might be able to get a few La Liga or Serie A matches, but you were watching them in Italian or in Spanish, or you were watching soccer in French. So the access to it wasn't the same. If you were able to find it, and you know, I very quickly fell in love with the beauty of soccer and recognized it as a beautiful game. I think I just loved that it was something you had to work for. It was a sport that you had to work for to be able to enjoy and you know, develop a passion for. So there was definitely that played a big factor. And the fact that, again, you had to wait 2 years for kind of a big tournament before it was on your television every day. Those months, Euro 96 and then the World Cup in 94, and then the World Cup again in 98, those were some of the best months of my childhood, where it was just, you know, completely immersed in high level, top quality international soccer for 32 days. So yeah, it kind of came from that, not being as common, not being as popular. That was a real draw to me. That was a real appeal.
Cool. Yeah, I'm like that, but I'm like that with baseball. Baseball is like I play it, I live it. I just will go to multiple Jays games a year, and obviously it's a little bit more popular than like what the soccer aspect is, but soccer is definitely coming up and getting the fan base that it does deserve now.
It really is. It is evolving. Yeah, it's been great to see. I mean, there's a lot of roadblocks. There's some things that I really wish could be done better for soccer. The fact that the Premier League and the Champions League is not on television. I understand for, you know, broadcast purchasing rights, and DAZN won the bid and the right to kind of do what they want with it. But it is really unfortunate and a setback for the game that it's not as accessible. There are times where I feel like, you know, soccer was more accessible 10 years ago. Than it is now. And I think that's for a game that needs momentum, needs to hang on to good momentum to continue to keep growing. I'd love to see more games on television. So it's kind of disappointing that for the time being, two of the best club leagues in the world we don't get to see. But who knows? That may change in the near future.
Fingers crossed it does. Now, out of all the like you mentioned all the different people that you worked with and you got mentors from, but has there been an athlete that you've been able to chat with throughout your career that kind of stands out for you as your favorite interview or your favorite chat with?
I've been pretty lucky to work with some great ex-athletes and become friends with. Danny Dichio and Craig Forrest were two fantastic players and achieved a lot in their careers, and then were able to transition into television and be very successful and very talented television professionals, which is very difficult to do for ex-athletes. And those two guys are just exceptional human beings. So I really enjoyed hearing their stories, and just to, you know, have a drink with them and get to know them was really cool for the few years that I was able to do that at Sportsnet with them. One day doing Central, we had I forget if it was the end of the season or the start of the playoffs, and it was rare that we were in the Central studio to have a hockey analyst join us on the show for a few minutes. Usually we would do a double ender. They were in a different studio, or they would kind of do their own package. And I had just been doing Central maybe 6 months. I don't think it was a year. And it was Denny Potvin, who I knew was a legend, but I never saw play. I didn't really, you know, have much of a connection to beyond knowing how excellent of a player he was, and seeing him as a great broadcaster and a great storyteller. And when he came into the studio and I shook his hand and he shook my elbow because he has the biggest hands I've ever seen. Then sitting next to the desk with him, that was the first time where I felt nerves. I felt a bit starstruck, and I was like a little sweaty probably. And I didn't anticipate that. I was a bit surprised that was my reaction, but he was fantastic to work with, a true pro, and such a good guy to talk to off air too. So yeah, that Denny Potvin story definitely stands out to me as far as the rare starstruck moments that I've had in my career.
Now, talking about hockey careers and hockey moments, you've played in the Eric Lindros Celebrity Hockey Classic in the past, out in my neck of the woods, out here in Whitby. And in that, you've got to play with a close friend of yours in Ken Reid. What's it like playing with Ken Reid on the ice, mixed in with all of these hockey greats?
Ken Reid is such a serious player. You should know this by how serious he is about hockey cards and how serious of a person he is and how serious he can be on air when he's talking about hockey or anything to do with the East Coast. So then put that into, a 20-minute intense period or a 30-minute charity game, which is probably how we were playing, and you really get just high level super intensity Ken Reed flying around in his old Gretzky style Jofa, no face mask or cage. He's the only reckless on air personality that's not worried about his face when he's playing hockey. And he's he might not be swearing up a storm, but he's got real good hockey talk. He loves to have the mouthpiece hang out of his mouth, flying up the ice. He's a real cool guy to play with. I think he gets more of a kick out of just the vintage equipment that he gets to roll out than being around some of these ex players that we're able to be around in these tournaments. But it's always a lot of fun, and Eric Lidros really does a great job for Easter Seals. It really is an exceptional tournament that I've been really fortunate 3 or 4 years to play with him and Steve Dangle. And Steve Dangle has taken over the running of the team, actually, and is a massive fundraiser, has been able to raise a lot of funds through his YouTube work and that for Easter Seals. So it's been really cool to be a part of that. I've been lucky to play alongside guys like Dennis Marouk, and Doug Gilmore wasn't on my team, but I've been playing against him, and he and I had a couple of good chats, which was really, really cool. That was definitely a pinch me moment. Like, wow, Doug Gilmore is enjoying a conversation with me. Steve Thomas, Nick Antropov, a few of those guys. It was really cool. I miss that. Hopefully we get to do that tournament again in November. It would be very disappointing if we weren't able to, but I guess we'll just see the way of the world and how it's spinning come November.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said at the top of the show, it's definitely an interesting time that we're in with all these sports originally being canceled. But the good sign is that you have the NBA, the NHL, they're making their plans, they're coming back, and the MLB even, I think I read a thing saying that they were looking at a July 10th start date. What now to figure out how many games they're going to play in the season is still to be determined, but at least they're making those strides to be able to come back and get things rolling.
Yeah, Major League Baseball has really struggled to get on the same page for sure, and I think that they've got a long road ahead of them to work out the best plan. But as long as they can come up with a plan that the players feel is at least fair enough for them, and a situation in which they're willing to go out and play, then I'm all for it. I miss baseball. I'm a big baseball guy. I think there's a couple of balls. You'll notice there's actually no Blue Jays memorabilia on my wall back here, but I much love for the Blue Jays, man. And I'm very much looking forward to going down to Rogers Center to enjoy a ball game sometime in the near future, but hopefully sooner rather than later. I think the NHL has probably the best plan. I think the NBA, if the NBA is able to still execute the plan, it seems as though they might have an issue with some players not wanting to go, and there might be some dissent in the ranks. So that would be really unfortunate for the NBA. But again, the leagues have a responsibility to their players to show that they're taking care of them and trying to put out the best product in the safest way, preserving and protecting the players. And if they can do that, then I think we'll get a great product down there in Orlando.
Now, my last question for you is: you've gone through so many transitions with the score, and now with the footage shown where you're at now. What kind of advice would you give to someone that may be watching that wants to get into broadcasting but may not know how to start? Like, they know they have to go to school, but they don't know kind of who to talk to or how to get their foot in the door. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I always say, and this now more so than ever, I think rings true, is that you have to always be willing to create content. And that's not just to put something out there. That's not to get likes. It's not to get clicks. And it certainly shouldn't be with the focus of, I need to develop my own brand. I say that because you need to develop the skill set. You need to develop work habits. You need to develop, find bad habits so that you can correct. And that only comes with repetition and experience. And so if you're waiting for the full-time job and the opportunity to do that on the Score or Sportsnet or what, you can't make mistakes at that level. So you have to find ways to be able to get some type of experience to prepare you for a moment where you're in that at that level and on that stage, and not making the mistakes. So I think right now it's a great time with YouTube series and with podcasts. These IG lives have been great in lockdown for sure. There's lots of ways to practice being at that level that you want to be at, and that's definitely something that I did and didn't have the technology or the opportunity to do to the same extent now when I was in my late teens and early 20s. So I always say that to students. It's a combination of consuming and researching. We should always be studying sports. That's another thing, is that switching your brain from being a fan, that I'm consuming this because I enjoy it, because I'm a fan, and then consuming it in a way that you can use for your job, that you can use for reporting, that you compartmentalize things that in the moment may not seem that big, but then when you're having a conversation with a Denny Potvin and you remember that you read about this game in '83 where the ice melted at Nassau and they played the game 4 hours later, all of a sudden that's a great nugget and a great story that you can have and you can share. So that comes from experience. That just comes from constantly consuming and reading and watching, and then you find ways where you actually get to use that in your work. So I do say that all the time. Always be active. Certainly don't burn yourself out. You'll never learn. You'll never know everything. James Sharman told me that, and that rings so true. You'll never be able to watch every single game. You'll never be able to read every article and to have every answer. But the more you watch, read, and consume, the more answers you will have, and the more well-rounded that you will be in pursuit of what you're doing. So it really is about finding a balance, which just comes from trying it. Just comes from having cyclical periods where you're very intense, and then moments where you slack off a little bit and you get back on the wagon and kind of find whatever the best balance is. It really is similar to a professional career in the sense of so much work is involved outside of what you just see on game day, outside of the 1 hour that you see on Central. I may only be in the studio for 20 hours a week, maybe, but I'm doing 60 hours a week worth of work, minimum. If I'm not doing that, that's not good enough in my personal standard. So definitely finding that off the field balance is key. But being able to practice and experiment is huge, and we've never had a better opportunity than now to be able to do that thanks to technology.
Hard work, determination, they all clump together, and that's the goal, right?
Absolutely, buddy.
Thank you, Brendan, for taking the time, the words of wisdom. Hopefully someone will be able to use those in their future career. And I thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, man, it was great. Thanks for giving me a shout, and thanks for sharing these stories, man. It's been very cool to see some other guys on here too, share some wisdom and some great stories, because everybody's got some.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Thanks, and we'll chat soon.
Cheers. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.